Welcome back to Coast Files, your podcast for ocean mysteries and true crime. I'm Chantel.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Megan.
And that is the three of us. You should know our names by now.
Thank you for joining us.
Obviously,
everyone, have a great day.
Every episode, and
yeah, you're our
can't
biggest
wait
fans.
for this one.
Exactly.
I mean, but as you guys recall, no big deal, but a listener did reach out, our first non-parent friend related listener. So
oh yeah,
kind of a big deal.
A big deal. Yeah. An actual fan, which was, yes, pretty awesome.
And was a very sweet message.
It was incredibly sweet. And they came from the Wine and Crime subreddit, which I'm like not surprised at all.
Yeah. Yes, that group is like so nice.
And they were also Team Smarty, you said, over Team M&M from our previous episode.
And even though they were American?
As a Canadian, I'm like, you're wrong. M&Ms are better. But it was just so sweet that they were like, you know, I have a Canadian best friend. They got me turned on. I'm like, well, they're wrong.
I think when it comes to the Smartie versus M&M debate, it depends on whether you're eating it for the candy coating or the chocolate.
Oh, well, the candy coating is better for Smarties.
It's thicker.
I think it's more coating to chocolate ratio.
You can hold it in your mouth.
Slightly better.
M&M.
You hold it in your mouth. You let it melt. You can crack it in half, and then you get two little discs. And it's this whole thing that no one knows you're doing, but you know you're doing it. Whereas M&Ms, you just shove them down your throat.
In your mouth, not in your hands. Wasn't that their whole thing?
Because of the thick candy coating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, now I really want to have some Smarties and M&Ms.
And also for release day, it is the day after my birthday. So that's
happy birthday, Chantel. We hope you like all the gifts and flowers we got you. And if you didn't, well, then it must have got lost in the mail. But
that's what happened. Yeah,
I'm so many presents.
As old as you guys.
Okay, well, that was uncalled for.
I'm very rude.
Extremely rude.
I'm the baby of the group, guys.
We are within 6 months of each other.
6 months.
So.
Actually, Lindsay and I are exactly 6 months apart.
So we're in 7 months of each other.
Mm-hmm. I'm just glad that Lindsay is right behind me by like 2 weeks, so she can't
a month. Like 3.5 weeks. Yeah.
Well, because for some reason I always just count it like, you know, there's Christmas time going on, no one even is paying attention, so I count it like the 2 weeks of normal time. But no, you're right, it's definitely a month. I'm just trying to get whatever grasp on being not the oldest that I can.
You just gotta give it up.
We'll just have to befriend someone older than all of us.
We were talking about, I'm pretty sure that our friend Steph, so sorry, my dear, is the oldest. So thank God for that.
Well, and your husband's like, you know, what, 17 years older than you or something? Like,
I mean, if he ever listens to the podcast, he'll hear all the times that we make fun of him.
He's going to be so mad at me. But he actually loves me.
But at least he'll be listening.
Yeah, so if he hears all the disses, that's just the payment for not listening for months and months.
That's fair. I think that's 100% fair. So today we are going to be talking about the Kursk submarine disaster. So you can start on photo 1 there. It's a little map to show where this takes place. So on the morning of August 12th, 2000, 135 kilometers, 84 miles off the shore of Submarine, 118 men were trapped 108 meters, 354 feet underwater in the Barents Sea, but no one was looking for them.
Okay, hold on.
Oh.
Sorry, how many people again? 100 and what?
118.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I already have so many questions, but I know you haven't started yet. So
I have so many answers.
Okay. I'm just going to listen. You tell us when we can freak out, okay? And ask questions. Okay.
I'm already like on the edge of my seat. This is
it's
just wild.
This story is crazy. I want to start out by saying that I got a lot of my information actually from this YouTube video podcast called Defragged History. They'll be linked on our website, and they have a 5-part very in-depth series of this that is just phenomenal. They go, really into what is happening. I really liked it a lot. Each part is over an hour though, so strap in if you're going to watch it because it's long, but it's totally worth it. I was able to get a lot more in-depth information, which I go into in certain parts, but then, you know, kind of sum up in other parts because otherwise this would be a 5-hour podcast, which I didn't think that we wanted today.
No, especially not all in one sitting because, like,
I want to talk to you guys for 5 hours.
Yes, but maybe switch topics every once in a while.
Yeah.
So you can go to photo number 2 here. This is the Kursk submarine, which was a K-141 Russian nuclear-powered submarine cruiser. And
that's what I was going to say. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it could
I was
hold
going to guess that too.
Cruiser missiles. I was about to say muscles. I said that so many times when I was practicing this, and I was like, Chantel, don't say muscles.
And yet
it's missiles. Fire the missiles.
This is why I don't practice.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah. So it was commissioned in 1990 during the Cold War and was finished being built in May of 1994, and it was a $1 billion submarine.
In 94.
Keep that in mind.
Lordy, okay.
Yeah, that seems like a lot considering some of the subs we've talked about so far. Like, I mean, they're smaller, but not $1 billion.
Well, you'll see why it's $1 billion, actually, because I'm going to describe it a bit more here. So it's named after an area in Russia, Kursk, that was famous for the biggest tank battle during World War II. And it's powered by 2 nuclear reactors, has 97,990 shipboard horsepower, can get up to 30 knots, which is approximately 60 kilometers an hour underwater, which is crazy if you think about something going that fast. It was built to be able to shoot large boats and planes. It's as long as 2 jumbo jets, could displace 18,000 tons of water. It had a gym, a sauna, a swimming pool, 10 airtight compartments, a relaxation area for the sailors to read or listen to music, a fish tank, a solarium, plants. It was decked out.
This is a submarine, correct?
Yes.
I'm just making sure that I didn't miss some huge...
I assumed it was for work purposes. Sounds like it's luxury.
It's because it could go on as long as like very, very long, you know, missions.
Like weeks?
So
months?
But most subs could, right? Like,
yeah, but they really kind of made it so that, well, first of all, it could hold, I think, up to 130 people, actually. So they just wanted to make sure that people were able to kind of like relax at the same time. But it was also quiet as fuck. It was lined in a thick layer of black rubber that prevented any noise inside the sub from bleeding out. And this also absorbed sonar signals from the enemy subs or acoustic homing torpedoes, making it basically invisible underwater.
I hoped you were going to say invisible.
Yeah.
This is so creepy. This
sounds like it would be good to like record in too, because, you know, soundproof.
There we go.
I was thinking it's like a Bond villain, like lair, like a moving lair.
I am going to be very curious as to why no one was looking for it, because if I put $1 billion in the water, I would want to know where it is. So
we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
So if you go to photo 3 there, so it was called Unsinkable.
Okay.
You of any other
familiar
that we may have just talked about?
Just to whoever is listening, just think before you start putting those kinds of monikers on anything that is man-made. Yeah. Or even just anything. Just
don't use that.
Be humble. Okay.
But they called it that because it had a 6-foot gap between its inner and outer hulls. So it had an inner light hull it had an external light hull and an internal pressure hull. And it had the 6-foot gap, and that's where you can see like some torpedoes are. Or missiles are. That's where they would go, like the missile tubes were, in between the 6-foot gap. So this also meant that if it were to collide with anything or a torpedo were to hit it, it would only affect the outside, not the inside. So these double hulls made it even safer, which is why they called it unsinkable. And a fun fact, only Soviet subs are built with double hulls when they are larger. Any large American subs are usually built with only a single hull. So this thing was like really strong. And then photo 4, which we'll probably come back to a couple of times as well, or like you can just kind of keep the one open a little bit later, but it shows that it had 10 compartments, and each of these could seal off if anything tragic happened. Also kind of like another unsinkable ship. It could hold 24 P-700 missiles, which NATO lovingly nicknamed these SSN-19 shipwrecks. These cruise missiles were 10 meters, 33 feet long, weighed 750 kilograms, so 1,653 pounds. They had a range of 625 kilometers, 388 miles, and could reach speeds of 1,974 kilometers per hour. Or for the Americans.
How is this even possible? Also, I guess, just curious too, I don't know if you know the answer, but these seem pretty big. So how would they like load them? I guess it seems like you would need quite a bit of power to even.
Yeah, so they had like arms to load the ships, and then they had like multiple people. They had ways of like pushing them. If you go and watch videos on it, they kind of like show all of that, like how they would load missiles into the holes. But while this submarine was a great achievement and something to boast about, it was mainly considered unemployed, meaning people were not being trained on this powerhouse of a ship. This was due to the state of Russia with funding post-Cold War. They were very poor at that time. It did have a short stealth mission in 1999, monitoring the USS Theodore Roosevelt as part of the Sixth Fleet that responded to the Kosovo War in the Mediterranean Sea. This little stint apparently cost the U.S. tens of thousands of dollars because they knew something was in the water, but they couldn't quite figure it out. So they had to have specialized aircrafts go out to like release these sonar buoys. This is kind of up for debate, though, because the States has been spying on Russia ever, like, still past the Cold War, even though they weren't supposed to be. So they kind of say, like, no, you guys already knew about this thing. You probably had the sonar graphs already, like, in your recording somewhere. So take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, the USS was like, the US was like, you guys cost us like a crap ton of money.
I'm pretty sure that they've been spying on each other since like, oh my God, since World War One.
We talk about it more.
Well. Also, kind of say that I have this sense of like just dread knowing that this thing exists. Doesn't affect my daily life, but it will every day now.
Well, I mean, it was literally created because they're like, we need to make sure that if the US ever comes after us or Britain ever comes after us, that we can destroy you. And you guys won't even know that we're there.
Yes.
So,
I mean, with more than just the sub. Like they had.
But this was like their main, like, hey, we got this.
This was their show pony.
We get into a couple of other ones too. So quickly, I'm just going to go over what Russia was like at the time and kind of what got them there so you can have a better understanding of like their money. Boris Yeltsin was the first elected president of Russia. He was the president from 1991 to 1999, and he was trying to change Russia from the Soviet ways and opened up a free market economy. He tried to sell off state-run businesses quickly to speed up the privatization, but this backfired when the oligarchs bought up basically everything and bankrupted Russia, who was already not doing so well post-Cold War. Crime and corruption skyrockets, fuel and food was scarce, and it was not an easy time for the Russians themselves. So Yeltsin, not exactly being a favorite of the people, eventually stepped down after a slew of other bad calls that only made things worse for Russia. He had Vladimir Putin, who was currently the prime minister, promoted to acting successor. Not many knew who he was, just that he was a former KGB. Putin was officially elected in March of 2000, and he came in guns blazing with a 10-year plan to up the Navy's strength that had been dwindling at this time. Sailors were only paid around $600 a month, if at all, because a lot of times they had missing checks because they just couldn't afford to pay them. And he stated Russia's Navy was a symbol of strong Russian state and the pillar of its defense capabilities. So he like really believed in the Navy. So the Navy used to be super strong. At its peak in the 1980s, it had 180 subs that were deployed, but by the end of the 90s, less than 40 were still in commission, with many of them just sitting in the water decaying without the money to upkeep them. So these are nuclear-powered subs sitting in the water decaying.
Are they being like protected by anyone?
They're in the Navy, like on the docks.
Okay.
Sometimes they would hook up the nuclear reactors to help run power generators there because like they couldn't always get power to the docks, and there were apartments of like the crew and the sailors that lived there and their families. But this is how poor Russia was at the time. Like they didn't have anything. And
They didn't try
and
to
then
sell
they have this $1 billion sub.
Yeah,
I mean,
listen, Russia's very secretive about
sell this particular sub, but they maybe
no. But Russia's also
or...
very secretive about what they have and how they've built it and all of that, right? So I don't think they're exactly going to be up for selling things as much as they'll be like, let's maybe use things for parts.
Yes, I mean, like they could take things apart. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they tried their best, but even then at one point, I forget exactly when it was, but at one point they asked the government for like $1 million. They were like, we need $1 million to help, you know, with the Navy, pay our employees, fix things up, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, how's $16,000?
And first of all, when it comes to...
Even $1 million is barely anything.
I was going to say, when it comes to a country's Navy, $1 million is hilarious because Canada doesn't have, like, we're not, you know, I mean, we're wealthy in some ways, but I mean, got billions of dollars on bullshit.
Yeah.
But like, how huge Russia is
on defense.
And we're talking about like one area, one Navy, like and they're poor. Like they have no money. They've been like, yeah. So next we're going to get into the Summer X Games, which is where all of this takes place. So the Navy admirals were looking to impress Putin, so they decided to put on a large-scale naval exercises, and these were announced in May of 2000. It would be a 3-day exercise involving around 30 Russian ships and aircrafts and cost millions of dollars. And they decided to do this on August 10th, 2000 to commemorate Putin's 100th day in office.
Okay, so they'll spend millions to commemorate.
Well, no, they were running these games. Oh. They were just saying like, we're doing it on this day because they were trying to impress Putin.
Money.
Putin wanted, I mean, so Summer X Games happen on a regular basis. They hadn't happened since the 90s though, because of money, basically.
Yeah.
But they're called war games. It's very common for countries to do this, to go out and run practices. And so since Putin was so like, our Navy is the best, the admirals were like, let's really show Putin what our Navy can be like. And so they decided to have these go on. But things were different than pre-Soviet ways, and information flowed a little more freely. And USA got wind of these summer games and was like, let's go spy. Because of course they were.
Kind of sounds cool. Like I'd watch this movie though.
Yeah. They were very interested in learning about two of Russia's subs, so the SSBNs, which are ballistic missile subs, and the SSGNs, which are the nuclear-guided missile subs, so the Kursk. During the summer games, two subs were monitoring the exercises, the SS Memphis and the SS Toledo, also a U.S. surface ship, a Norwegian aircraft, and a U.S. aircraft. Russia apparently didn't know.
There's so many people there. Just yeah, okay.
But they, you know, once again, Russia doesn't like to give off what they know. So they assumed that NATO countries were going to be there watching them.
Mm-hmm. But they were invited, I assume.
No, they weren't supposed to be there.
They did not get the gift bag. They were not invited.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, but I mean, like they weren't stopping any people from coming in.
Well,
like,
they're allowed to come in. Anybody's allowed to come into certain waters, but we get into it a little bit. There are certain areas where it's like you're not allowed to come into these areas unless we know that you're coming in. So they were secretly going there to watch them. No. So some thought that these summer games were a sham, trying to prove that they were better than they actually were. And others thought that they were using these games to try and hide things that were going on. And apparently Admiral Václav Popov, who was the admiral of the Peter the Great ship, which we talk about a lot, saw this as an opportunity to see if they could sneak a submarine loaded with nuclear missiles past the American spies. There was more about that, but I don't really get into it. But like there was a lot of like secret things kind of going on during these games as well. The crew on the Kursk for this were the best in the fleet. They had Captain Grenady P. Leitchen, 111 crew members, 5 officers of the 7th SSGN Division, and 2 designers. So August 10th rolls around and the Kursk was already loaded with its weapons for the games, its normal shipwreck missiles, but then it also had 2 new torpedoes.
Okay, but why did it load missiles for big games?
So it always was loaded with missiles, but then I tell you in a little bit what they do with these special things, so don't worry, we get into that. So typically the Kursk would carry what's called anti-submarine torpedoes. These would be used if, let's say, you sink a sub with your shipwreck missiles. Now, what's called anti-submarine forces are coming for you. So you have your anti-submarine torpedoes that you would then blast off at these people to try and save you, basically. But the anti-submarine torpedoes were past their shelf life, and they didn't have the money to repair them or get new ones. So instead, they loaded on one missile or one torpedo that I don't get into as much, but they also loaded one that was a 6576A combat torpedo, also known as Fat Girl or the Whale. This torpedo,
rude.
We're going to go with the Whale. This torpedo weighed 9,000 pounds and was the length of a school bus.
Okay, well now I kind of get the Fat Girl Whale comment.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big bomb, so.
The Whale is a long-range torpedo, and they required a lot of specialized people to closely monitor these weapons and understand what to do if something goes wrong. Not to mention, they should be on smaller submarines that can move quickly during combat, but like the Kursk is not something that like moves very quickly. It's very big. It's supposed to be there for protection. But they just needed something to use during the games. So torpedoes need a powerful engine to propel them underwater. Engine needs fuel, and fuel needs oxygen. You don't really have oxygen underwater, so they need an oxidizer. And the ones that the Whale would use is called a high test peroxide, so HTP. And HTP is highly volatile and will explode if it comes into contact with other dusts and metals. So most other countries had abandoned using these by the 1960s because they were so volatile and did require so much ongoing maintenance. But they were extremely powerful, and Russia was still using them. There were a lot of fail-safes on them as well, but the crew would need to know how to monitor these and how to make swift calls if anything did go wrong. They also, to add insult to injury, while the crew was all seasoned and competent, they didn't know much about the whales. The man trained for the whale exercise had been removed for insubordination. The lead torpedo man had gotten injured recently and was hospitalized, and his substitute was on vacation, unable to get back in time. And lastly, the flag officer who was assigned to oversee the whale's shooting practice was off ill on August 10th.
So there's just a bunch of
kids. Don't do it.
I feel like there's a bunch of people on the ship that have no idea how any of the weapons work.
Everyone who knows what they're doing is not here, so let's still do it.
I know. It was so many bad call after bad call after bad call is made in this situation. So to answer your question earlier, these torpedoes and missiles aren't weaponized. What happens is that they take out the heads of them where the actual like gun, I don't know what like the ballistics actually is. So they fill it with water. So what happens when they shoot these out during these games is that they just let the water out, and then they float to the top, and then ships come along and collect them back up to read the data from them so that they can kind of understand how did they shoot, how long did it take, did anything go wrong, would they have gone off, how far did they go, that kind of stuff, right? Were they on the right trajectory, all of that. So plus then they can reuse them because they're not about to like waste these that cost so much money. Yeah. Once again, the secret missions that were going on, just kind of a lot of crap going on during this. Here is a fun little tidbit for you guys, though.
I'm ready. I love
mystical
fun tidbits.
Okay. So you can go to the next photo. You probably recognize this woman. Her name is Baba Vanga.
She's a little babushka.
She is a Bulgarian woman who made many, many predictions over her lifetime that mostly came true. If you listen to episode 367 of And That's Why We Drink, Em covers her in depth and everything that she did.
Maybe that's why I recognize her.
Wait, everyone, just wait. I'm going to go really quick to my podcast list. I want to see what episode I'm on right now. Okay, yeah, go on. I want to know more about her.
She made a prediction in 1980 that Kursk would be covered in water and the whole world would weep over it.
What the heck?
She said this would happen in August of 1999. So she's off by a year. And at the time, people all wondered what she meant because Kursk, the actual city, is nowhere near any bodies of water. So they were kind of like, this prediction doesn't make any sense. But obviously in 1980, that was much earlier than the Kursk submarine was even like being dreamed about. So kind of weird and uncanny that she made this prediction. But yeah, kind of cool.
I love stuff like that where they'll say a phrase and it makes no sense until you actually break down what the person's saying. Yeah. I can't think of an example, but in my head I can picture movies and such that's, like, oh, the bus will crash, whatever, but it's not like a school bus, it's something else. And it's just, if you open your mind, you see that it makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And spooky.
So I'm going to go over the events of the days that follow the summer games as well as some afterwards. So it wasn't until 10 p.m. on August 10th, 2000 that the Kursk finally goes to the area of where the summer war games will be happening. And they arrive 5 hours late due to difficulties with cranes loading the submarines, just their stuff that they had wasn't working the best that day.
Regular when they submarine problems.
Yeah, submarine loading problems. When they arrive, they're told to go into position for the first game. On August 11th, 2000, at 12:40 p.m., they fire some of their missiles at an abandoned vessel 200 miles away. One worked, one failed. They were happy. They considered that a success. Their next game would be to shoot missiles and torpedoes at the Peter the Great ship, which is photo number 6 there. August 12th, 2000, at 8:51 a.m., the Kursk is in the position area and is told to lower to a periscope depth by Admiral Popov on the Peter the Great. They would not have contact with the Peter the Great again until after the testing period, which would be between 11:40 a.m. to 1:40 p.m. Between 9 and 10 a.m., the crew was ordered to load the torpedoes. 10:05 a.m., the sub was put into position under the Peter the Great. 11:28 a.m., the launch tube is being flooded with water to get ready to launch the torpedo. At 11:28 a.m. and 26 seconds, the USS Memphis sensors pick up a shockwave loud enough for everybody to hear, even without listening gear on. Wow. 2 minutes and 15 seconds later, a second explosion, 250 times larger than the first, so big that it was picked up on seismographs in Canada, Norway, Alaska, and Africa, measuring as high as 4.2 on the Richter scale, was picked up. The SS Memphis is kind of like...
Okay, I don't know the Richter scale very well, to be honest, but
that's big.
Just the fact that it was
high.
Picked up that's big. Far away. Wow.
So the SS Memphis is like, that doesn't seem right. The Russian subs were kind of like, everything as usual, because nobody knew what each person was supposed to be doing during the game. So if they heard something, they weren't sure if it was wrong or not. They had fear of giving away intelligence because they knew that NATO vessels would be listening to what was going on, and they were required to be at radio silence during this time. The big leagues in charge also got some reports, but they were like, misfires happen, just continue, we'll figure this out later.
4.2 on the Richter scale?
I mean, they don't know that. They just heard some things. The Peter the Great vessel does start to wonder what was going on when it's now 12:30 p.m. and the Kursk still hasn't shot off any missiles or torpedoes.
And also, just a question, is the point to just shoot at it with a blank? Is that... Yeah. They're not trying to sink this ship.
No.
Right?
No. Okay. They're just shooting, blanks at it. That's what I said about how it releases the water and then it goes up, right?
Okay.
But like they would know that something was happening. Their sonars would be picking up things, like stuff should be happening. They should be able to pick things up that are happening in the water.
Yeah. Even with it filled with water, though, I thought it could still do quite a bit of damage.
No, because the water releases and it just comes up. It doesn't, like, it'll only go so far. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
During this, Admiral Popov is giving an interview with the television crew that says everything's going great and the mission was a great success.
That's what a Russian would say.
Everything is fine. House on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Weather is getting bad and Popov just like bounces. He goes back to shore while the summer games are still going on.
Like, not my
problem. He is sweating, I'm sure. He's like, oh my God.
He gets into it. 1:40 p.m. comes around and the Kursk still hasn't done shit. It's now at the end of their period that they were supposed to be doing things. and they now have 1 hour to surface and report. But the Kursk continues to not do anything. No SOS, no launch, no signals, no alarm. 2:40 p.m., the Kursk is now considered missing/crashed according to Navy law, and a fleet-wide emergency alarm must be sound.
But
this doesn't happen.
Oh my God, this is insane.
The Peter the Great sends down an emergency ascent signal to the Kursk, being like, come up now, like what's going on?
Yeah.
To be fair, if anything major were to happen, something called emergency buoys are supposed to be deployed and send out distress signals. This would happen if there was any major pressure changes, flooding, fire, anything like that, so that people can then search for them.
Automatically, it would do that.
Yes, automatically. Mm-hmm. And these were being searched for in the area where the Kursk should have been, but they weren't finding anything. So the Kursk, according to Navy law, now has 1 hour to comply with these signals that the Peter the Great sent down. 3:40 p.m. comes around. Nothing. Once again, Fleet Command is not raising the alarm. And during this, Putin is actually dealing with some recent apartment bombings in Moscow and has no idea what's going on in the Summer Games. So Popov,
the games that are for him.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Oh, he was also like supposed to have gone on vacation like the day or two before, and he hadn't been able to go because he was dealing with all this stuff that was kind of like going on.
Well, he's just busy.
Yeah. So Popov is in his office likely shitting his pants, knowing that if he gives bad news, he's going to lose his job.
Or his
This
life.
is also no longer pre-Cold War, and the press had more freedoms. And Popov knew that it would be an absolute frenzy in the media if this got out. And there seems to be all kind of secret missions going on. So he's also like, what if this is just another secret mission that I wasn't aware of? And then I'm going to look bad if I report something.
I mean, that's just what he's telling himself, but he's probably very afraid of Putin.
I mean, I guess that it looked way worse on him later on.
Oh, yes. For so many reasons that we're going to get into. 4:30 p.m., the fleet commander, Admiral Baryachin, sends down a call to the sub. It has like a pretend name during the games in case anybody heard anything that was going on.
The Magic School
Bus.
The
Outsiders. Yes, we'll call it that. He's kind of like, what the hell, guys? Like, come up. This isn't funny anymore. Where are you?
Come on, guys. Wait, quit fooling.
Stop hiding. And reports are now going back to the USA from the USS Memphis because the USS Memphis is leaving and Toledo's coming in. So they're kind of like, hey, we think something bad happened to a Russian nuclear sub. And the USA and the UK now both know that something is going on, but not one of the higher-ups thought to inform the US or UK embassy in Russia. So 5 p.m., Deputy Admiral Marzak starts quietly alerting the rescue fleets of what's going on. He wasn't supposed to, he wasn't told to, but he just starts doing this. So, fun little thing about this, these rescue fleets, when a sub is in the water, they're supposed to be at 1 hour standby. Well, the boat is 11 hours away sitting in a harbor.
Oh, cool. So just a little off. Just a little.
Ready for action.
Yeah, just ready to go. 6 p.m. rolls around and the Kursk misses another communication checkpoint. And now Popov is really getting worried. He's like, I don't think this is part of it anymore. Like, I was worried
when I heard the 4.2 Richter scale. That I was like, well, they blew up. Like, my God.
But he still doesn't put out a fleet-wide alarm. He tells more boats to go there, and he tells Baryachin to start leading search efforts from the Peter the Great while he makes his way to the ship.
And wouldn't they know approximately where the sub is? It's all planned out, right?
I mean, but think of how big the ocean is once again. They have a general area that they're supposed to be in, but they're still trying to be stealth and secret, right?
And also this was not that far from
the way they made it sound, it's far enough that
the games, like, you think that's
it still has such like a big area that everything is happening in that it could literally be anywhere in this area that it's supposed to be. And remember, the Kursk is made to be undetectable.
Invisible.
Yes.
Okay. I thought we were all going to say invisible at the same time.
Sorry, Megan.
We can all do it now.
Okay. Invisible. We missed it. That's fine.
We can just fix it in post.
Chantel and I can tweak with the audio.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, Putin still doesn't know what's going on, and he's starting to leave on his vacation to Sochi.
So he didn't even see, just like, they're like, guys, Putin's going to love these games so much.
And he's like,
And there's this massive disaster, but he wasn't even there at all to begin with. So
he's
it's
I got so much
nothing.
other shit to do, and
But he doesn't know about the disaster, so that's
he doesn't know. He is nothing. He doesn't know anything yet. So, and the States has themselves in a pickle right now. No one from Russia has asked for help. And they don't know if this is because Russia doesn't realize how big of a deal this is, or if secrets are being kept from leadership, kind of like things were during, the Cold War era. And if they straight up ask Russia if they need help, they're
how do you know?
They know.
On them.
It's kind of like if you're doing something illegal, but you see something worse that's illegal happening, can you tell? Because you yourself are doing something bad.
How did you know?
You can ask for immunity, but maybe not in this case.
Yeah.
I feel like that's way above where I'm coming from, more like a person to person level. This is like, World War III kind of stuff.
If I am robbing a bank, but I witness a murder.
That's right. Don't ask me why I have this bag full of jewels. Listen to what I have to say.
So this guy named Berger in the States decides to call the Russian Security Council chief Ivanov, and he kind of brushes him off and is like, I'm going on vacation with Putin. Why are you calling me on a weekend? And so Berger's kind of like, this is weird. Why aren't you alarmed by what's going on? But he has no idea that neither Ivanov nor Putin know what's going on. So 7:30 p.m., Putin leaves, and Popov decides that the vessels around where the Kursk are should start sending down grenades in the water to tell the Kursks to respond. And this continues periodically for the next 2 hours.
I imagine, and maybe kill any survivors that are on their way up.
Well, I mean, this ship is supposed to be like, unsinkable.
So,
I don't think a grenade. Yeah.
But would they even hear the grenade?
Well, they were hoping that it would like pick up on a signal or a sonar or something and be like, oh shit, I don't know, maybe someone's asleep at the hull, like, or at the.
Is that how it works?
You said 118 people were down there though, so at least presumably someone is awake.
Yeah, so you would hope.
Actually,
maybe they're all watching a movie in the rec room.
Like, they're actually all
swimming in the pool.
They're all in the sauna, having a good heart to heart, and they're just crying. It's a lot of emotions. They're not really paying attention.
They just forgot what was going on.
Yeah.
10:30 p.m. Still nothing to report, and finally, a fleet-wide emergency is declared, and the summer war games were put to a halt. So now, Captain Koroblev of the Karelia sub got this message and was like, oh my God, there was this huge thing that happened at one point and my sub shook like crazy during the games, but I didn't think to say anything because I thought it was just part of it. And they were like, tell us everything. What happened? Like, where were you? What are the exact coordinates? Where did it hit you on the sub? Like, they just need to know everything. 11 p.m. rolls around. It's the final communication check-in time, and still no one has had contact with the Kursk since 8:51 a.m. 11:30 p.m., Popov says, hey, all Russian ships, here's all the info that we know. Help. Also, here's my resignation letter. Like, not really, but like he knew.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He knew that if he was saying this, like, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
He also calls his big boss,
the
Russian. Yeah. No, he didn't. He hung around for a while, but like he knew this wasn't going to look good on him. He also calls his big boss, the Russian Navy commander, Admiral Koryadov, and tells him, we lost the Kursk in the Barents Sea. So it's now just after midnight on August 13th, and still no one has called Putin to let him know what was going on and that this $1 billion submarine is missing. Nor
it's like
have they alerted.
You broke something of your dad's and you don't want to call him at work and tell him.
Yeah, you're like trying to fix it
$1
first.
Car.
Yeah.
It's like,
and they haven't told any of the family members of the missing crew either. The ship that had fitted with the rescue
questions
subs,
though, because this presumably is just a day trip, right?
It gets so
well,
no,
it's
3 days.
It was 3 days, so they don't know.
Okay.
So they're not even supposed to be done yet. They're supposed to be coming back like tomorrow. It's only
Okay.
just after midnight of
Okay,
the
so
13th.
no one's really been alerted yet.
No.
Okay.
But there's murmurings going on.
Yeah.
The ship that had been fitted with the rescue subs, there was bad weather, and it wasn't properly fitted to be able to go down in that weather. It didn't have the proper stabilizers. Also, the mini sub that they needed with the proper decompression chambers had been sitting in St. Petersburg for the last 6 years under repair. It's now 1:30 a.m. and the Peter the Great is picking up sonar taps believed to be SOS signals. and a little later they picked up a grinding metal sound. By this time, more and more higher-ups are being reported to, and the Kursk is nowhere to be found, but most are just assuming that it's either a communications error or people have the timing wrong, and the Kursk just hasn't reported yet because it hasn't been their reporting time. So response is slow, and the urgency just isn't there. 7:15 a.m., Marshal Igor Sergeyev finally calls Putin to let him know what's been going on. Putin asks about the nuclear reactors, about the rescue tactics for the men, and offers to fly home, but Sergeyev says, it's all under control, don't worry about it.
Is it
reality?
Yes.
They were worried what the press and people would say if the president had to cut his trip short. But later that morning, a sailor waiting in line for bread let it slip that he had been up all night searching for the Kursk, which others overheard, and news spread like absolute wildfire, with misinformation being thrown around, some family members losing their shit, other people going, this can't be true, it's unsinkable, how could that have sunk? It was just a lot.
Yeah.
So
but even if Putin did come back, like, what could he personally really do?
Listen, we get into this in a little bit about his reaction to things as well, because obviously there's a lot up for debate there about what he should have done. The next photo there is the Rudinsky. This is the rescue ship, and you can see it has a little sub attached to it. That is called the AS-34 Prise. And the Kursk was not located until 6:10 p.m. on August 13th using this sub that was on there.
That little baby guy.
Yes. This was 31 hours after the explosions. But, of course, almost immediately, the rough waters of the Barents Sea hit the Prise and caused it to bump into the Kursk, damaging its propulsion, and they needed to go back up for repairs. They send out another mini sub that basically is blind because its sonar doesn't work properly. By the time it's actually able to find the Kursk again, it's run out of battery and has to go back up for a recharge. And so many other things like this just kept happening over and over and over. They know where it is, but the water's murky. It's hard to find it every time. The Kursk is covered in rubber, so when they do find it, sometimes they don't even realize they're at it until they basically bump into it.
Okay.
That's so scary.
It's everything that could go wrong is going wrong. That Sunday night, the pre-recorded "Everything Went Well, the Summer Games Were a Success" is put onto the evening news. Not sure who okayed that, but assumptions were it was to deter
propaganda.
Excuse me. Eventually, on Monday, they admitted that there had been some minor technical difficulties, but that everybody is alive. They also stated that this accident happened on Sunday. Well, other countries start to chime in because the intelligence that they had doesn't line up with that story. A Norwegian seismologist looked at his data from Saturday and was like, well, the area of activity that we found is suspicious. It doesn't align with any earthquakes because the Barents Sea is a pretty stable ground there. There shouldn't be any earthquakes there. And this just doesn't make sense. But they very much clung to their story that it happened on Sunday. Because
that's very Russian.
Obviously, by the time they went looking for things was Sunday. So they don't really want to get, or officially were looking for things was Sunday. They don't want to get into trouble.
Yeah.
Now, since things were out, the States was finally able to offer help. And they were trying to find out more of what happened, but Popov's like, we got it under control. And he says no to them. To be fair, these men had a lot of reason not to trust the USA or foreign help in general. For instance, there had been 6 submarine collisions between the Soviet and NATO subs during the Cold War, and at least 2 after that we know about. One was in 1992. This happened at the very edge of the Russian maritime border, so U.S. ships are not supposed to be there. The Kostroma was ascending, and it did not know that the USS Baton Rouge was directly above them. And the Baton Rouge did not know that Kostroma was right below them until they heard metal screeching as they banged into one another. They were using
what's called both invisible, that they don't.
No, it's because they were using what was called passive sonar, so they were only looking in front of them, not below and above.
Okay. I mean, what are the odds? I guess that you're like, oh,
no one died
directly above.
Were they women drivers?
Probably. No one died, but the vessels were heavily damaged, and the Pentagon tried to cover this up, but Russia didn't allow them to. They were like, no, we're telling. And so then the U.S. was like, okay, we'll leave the Barents Sea. We won't come back. Just, fingers
for those that are not watching, Chantel is crossing her fingers, telling that she's going to lie.
1 year later, in 1993, the USS Grayling was tracking the Novomoskovsk and accidentally rammed into them.
Accidentally blasted into their side.
Once again, no lives were lost, but so you can see Russia has a lot of reasons to be like, I don't trust you guys with anything.
Oh yeah, totally.
So NATO started to offer help, but also Russia does not trust NATO at all. So they're like, no, we're good. But then the NATO countries started offering individually from NATO. So France, Germany, Italy, Canada, and then even Sweden and Japan were offering help. But Russia kept saying they were fine and they had it under control, knowing full well that they did not.
Russia, you're embarrassing yourself. Just take the help.
There's a lot of things that happen. There are a lot of reasons for this happening. 2 p.m. there was an announcement on the Russian TV channels that the Kursk had sunk on Saturday and the sub was flooding. The Russian Navy came back and said that's a lie and the issue happened on Sunday. 6 p.m. Commander Korodov, the big boss, says, actually it's bad. It's really bad. And we believe it was a collision.
Oh.
Now,
but
okay.
There's some very loose clues to say that this could be the case. But that means that there should be another sub down there. If you took down the unsinkable sub, you must look like a fucking bottle can down there, like a crushed bottle. So they were hoping that another country, the U.S., would be coming forward soon to say this. Anyways, obviously nobody does. No, and there's no other sub down there. Yeah, exactly. Storms are coming in and things are getting harder and harder for the crews that are searching for the Kursk and trying to get things up. And they're getting mad at their useless equipment. And of course, they're tired. They've been searching for like a day now plus. August 15th, the Russian prime minister goes to see Putin in Sochi and he explains the situation, but basically is like, we have it under control. You can stay here. Putin at this time did tell the Israeli prime minister that there was no need for help as it wasn't likely that anyone was alive.
Oh, yikes.
Staying in Sochi wasn't the best idea for Putin.
It seems clear, though, you don't have everything, to complete a rescue, though, and you still need to...
But
well, he's saying from what the intelligence that they have so far, it's not likely that anybody would have survived whatever we think is happening.
But then as a leader, you go there to support your country.
But you don't know.
So that comes into this. So staying in Sochi probably wasn't the best idea for him, but Putin, I'm sure, regrets this now. But he was listening to his officials and all of the information that they were giving him and all the advice that they were giving him. The higher-ups continued to debate on outside help, but pride and secrets were getting in the way. The Kursk was the best in every way possible. It had state-of-the-art communications, weapons, stealth. They figured sailors dying was worth keeping these secrets. The wives of these men lashed out. Once again, this is a different time for Russia. And the wives made sure that everyone knew that the Navy was incompetent and botching rescue missions. They went to the media. They began frenzies. The media began to learn about the foreign rescue offers that had been declined. And then more insult to injury. Putin was filmed having jet ski races and barbecues on his vacation, seemingly carefree and indifferent to the disasters that were going on at home. The back and forth and debauchery continued on for days. Putin finally returns on the 18th and, of course, was immediately interviewed. He stated that what he had been told, which made it glaringly obvious that his people were keeping things from him, and that his presence would not have helped. Some accepted this, well, like you said, Megan, others thought he should have at least been there to show his support. It was still on the 18th that Britain
and I don't want to give Putin credit, but they did lie to him about what was going on. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they did.
So
they
now
were
he's probably even
constantly
more
lying and
upset
keeping...
because now he looks like a big idiot, like not even knowing what's going on.
And
honesty
his
is
backlash,
the best policy.
His backlash is a lot. We get into that.
Yeah, like
wait,
they made it
Putin
so much
is
worse by not
vindictive.
Like he would have been mad, like this level mad, but now he's gonna be like
yes.
Nuclear.
And remember, he's very new. They don't know a lot about him. All that they know is that he is like former KGB. That was another thing that they mentioned at one point, was that they were trying to make decisions thinking about what he would have wanted, but they didn't really know Putin well enough to know what he would have wanted. They didn't know, should we accept this U.S. help because Putin maybe will want to have good relations with the U.S. and see this as a point of being like, hey, let's all help one another out, or will he continue to want to keep secrets?
If you asked him, he would have told you.
Exactly. That was the other thing. People were like, well, why didn't you just freaking ask him what he wanted?
Just go to dad, tell him you made a mistake.
They were scared. They didn't know how he would respond. Some of them knew that they would be, fired or taken out of their positions, or anyways, it's just was such a clusterfuck.
Yeah, but you thought you're just going to like somehow rectify this on your own at this point? And everything
behind his back.
Okay. Yeah. He's going to
Anyways. On the 18th, Britain and Norway were finally allowed to join the search. On the 19th, the Norwegian ship Normand Pioneer arrived with a British rescue sub on it. But the Russian admirals were still trying to keep their secrets, and they weren't giving all of the information that the Norwegians need to properly and safely perform a rescue operation. And the Russians were saying, no, the Brits are the ones that are making our jobs impossible. So it was just a lot of this like playground name calling back and forth that was happening.
Yeah, they're coming to help you, so...
Yeah. I know.
Doesn't make sense.
So August 21st. We're now, this happened on the 12th. We're now on August 21st at 7:45 a.m. A Norwegian rescue diver opens the outer emergency airlock hatch. This would have been about the 6th compartment. So where are we at now? 7. Yeah. So you can go back to where the compartments were. I think this was around the 6th compartment that they said 5th or 6th. That there's a special escape hatch. So they open up the emergency airlock hatch, and no one's in there. By 1 p.m., they open the inner airlock. It's completely flooded, and bodies are scattered everywhere.
Oh, my God.
It was announced at 9 p.m. that night that all the sailors had passed. There was outrage.
Honestly,
I was
worried this was going to happen, but I thought, I honestly was hoping that it was just going to be, they found everyone.
No.
And, because they're in this great sub that they somehow
survived. Listen, this is going to get really sad from here.
Oh, great.
So it was announced at 9 p.m. that night that all the sailors had passed. Everybody, there was outcries, there was outrage from the
that
families.
Explains why no one's responding. Because
well, they thought maybe the communications had just
12,
been
almost 12 days.
That's kind of what I was thinking. That maybe
because they have all these compartments
that can
be. So at one point they said that they should have had enough air to last them to the 18th had things been shut off properly. But we'll get into all this.
Okay.
The names had still not been released of who was actually on this ship. Of course, those who hadn't heard from family members by this point had to assume it was them. Later on August 21st, Russia asks Norway again for help for the removal of the bodies. They had specialized equipment to be able to cut open the hull so the bodies could be recovered. Once the Norway Stolt Offshore Company had opened up the sides, only Russian divers were allowed to enter the submarine to retrieve the men. A lot of the men were badly burned, refuting the story of a collision. The divers had found 12 bodies in compartment 9, indicating that some had survived the initial disaster only to die later. So you can go to
a fire erupted on the sub first, and
some
then
kind of
I'm going to get into what actually happens. I'll tell you. We know. So you can go back to August 8th. It's a picture of a woman. Sorry, photo 8. It's a picture of a woman.
She looks unhappy.
Yes. So on August 24th, this is a mother. August 24th, a conference was held with 350 family members of the sailors who are allowed to enter. Journalists were kept out, but some got in under the guise of being family members. During this, Putin and other officials were given hell. The family screamed, "Who killed our boys? Who will pay?" And one mother, who is the one that you're looking at, her name is Nadia Tilik. She screamed, "You better shoot yourselves now. We won't let you live." People thought this crowd was going to tear them apart. And just then, you see that other woman standing behind her?
Yeah.
And that nurse came up behind her and injected her with a sedative.
Well, that's what
she's doing. You gave me chills. Yes. I literally just got chills.
Oh my God, yeah.
So she said, all of a sudden, I just was unable to speak. That man that's holding her had to help her down, and they escorted her out. That, of course, didn't exactly bode well, because since the journalist got in there, it was on film. There were pictures of it, and it went everywhere.
This is some straight up, like, legit Russian shit.
Yeah.
You just gave me chills. I in a million years never would have thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to say that woman had a gun and maybe did shoot someone.
So verbal threat, and she's injected.
Yes. Now,
but then that means that woman is in there under the guise of being
like that was the other thing, is that they were prepared
hidden
for these things. So they said that they did this because all of this outrage and how people were acting was just hurting some of the family members, and obviously they were worried about the officials being hurt and blah blah blah. But like, that ain't right. Sure, have security there to calm people down and escort, but a sedative?
Can you imagine that happening in Canada? Like, can you imagine?
I assume too that they knew they messed up enough that people were going to be this level of angry that they would.
Yes, of course. So now we're going to get into what actually happened. The investigation lasted for a few years before what seemed like the truth came out. The first explosion destroyed the first two compartments. It is assumed because of the force of the pressure that would have occurred from the blast, it would have killed most of the men instantly. This then started a chain reaction of 5 to 7 more missiles to go off and tore a massive hole in the hull, causing the second shockwave that was felt. The nuclear reactors shut down as they were meant to in an accident to prevent them from getting damaged or blowing up. 23 men survived and went back to the 9th compartment. Because the reactors were shut down, decompression, clean oxygen, and waterproofing was not sufficient, meaning oxygen was depleting quickly and water was coming in. Freezing water. We're in the Barents. The men all perished about 6 hours after the initial accident. One of the men tried to change what was called a potassium superoxide chemical oxygen cartridge. So what this does is that since
Say that 5 times fast.
Since the nuclear reactors are not going to help to clean out the CO2 and have more oxygen comes in, they use these cartridges and they put them in, and it helps to deplete the CO2 and change it into oxygen. But it fell into oily water, causing a chemical reaction that blew up, killing some of the survivors instantly and suffocating the rest as the fire burned up the remaining oxygen.
That's like a horror movie.
Yeah. A note was found in Captain Lieutenant Dmitry Kolesnikov. It's 13:15 hours. All personnel from Section 6, 7, and 8 have moved to Section 9. 23 people are here. We feel bad, weakened by carbon dioxide. Pressure is increasing in the compartment. If we head for the surface, we won't survive the compression. None of us can escape. 2 hours later, he wrote, "It's dark here to write, but I'll try by feel. It seems like there are no chances, 10 to 20%. Let's hope at least someone will read this. Here's a list of personnel from the other sections who are now in the 9th and will attempt to get out. Regards to everybody. No need for despair. Kolesnikov." There was also said to be, I mean, and he even had the wherewithal to I think they found it in plastic, so he put that so that they could find it.
He probably knew.
Apparently there was another note found in another lieutenant commander's pocket wrapped in plastic, and it talked about the faults of the torpedo compartments, things that were happening on board with, like they said, the H-2P torpedo, the whale. But seeing as this note contradicted what the government was initially saying, a collision, this note went missing.
Shocked. That happens a lot in these cases, not even Russian ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Government
not likely.
hiding things.
What? Government hides things.
Yeah.
It was not likely, even if the Russian Navy hadn't fumbled the rescue operation the way that they did, that anyone would have been saved from this tragedy. In a later poll, 79% of Russians stated the government was hiding the real reason for the tragedy, and 11% said they were confident the government was telling the truth. So, like, that's a huge disparity.
I'm shocked they even, like, published that poll.
I think that was taken in, like, 2009, too. Like, it was much later after this. 60% of people said that they still supported Putin. This was during this, and 27.8% said the disaster had lessened their support for him, which is quite a blow for a newly elected president to take.
Yeah. Putin Plus, I bet 90% of those people were too scared to say they weren't supporting.
Probably, yeah. Putin gave the relatives a widely
You can do it. You can do it.
Unprecedented? There we go.
Yeah.
Putin gave the close relatives widely unprecedented amount of money. Some thought this was fishy and that they were trying to hide something or throwing money at it to make the issue go away. They said maybe they were over apologizing. He gave them an apartment worth 720,000 rubles, so $26,000 USD, free telephone services, free electricity, and each of the deceased crew members were given the Order of Valor. Now, Russia,
I mean,
was poor
that
at this
seems
time.
like a pretty...
Yeah, where's his money coming from?
But Russia was poor. You're talking about like
you,
350 people, or at least 118.
The government probably isn't as poor as the people, right? So
no, like the government is poor. The country is poor. I mean, that's what I talked about earlier. The country is poor. They have
when something like this happens, you do owe compensation.
Yes, but the thing is that there had been another disaster not that long ago, and the women were kind of like, we were given 10 times the amount that they were, and this was like a much worse thing that happened to them. Like in comparison to kind of like what happened, she was like, this just doesn't seem right.
It being suffocated in a submarine.
Yes, it was. I think one of the. What was it again? I'd have to look it up again. But yeah, it was like something that happened there. They were just like, they had it much worse and things were much shittier then, and they were given much less than what we were. And she was just like, it doesn't make sense. It seems fishy that they're giving us this amount. But of course, Putin wasn't in power at the time. So maybe he's just somebody to also give more to people that go through these type of tragedies at the same time.
I find that hard to believe, knowing his vibe now.
I mean, he cares a lot for the Russian people, though, in Russia itself. So
as long as they're straight.
Yeah.
But I think he also wants, to look good to the people.
He's still pretty new.
He's fairly new. He's
the right thing to do.
Yeah. And as Megan alluded to, I don't know what you've heard about Putin, but he doesn't seem like the kind of man that will sit by quietly after finding out he was undermined and lied to profusely by his own people.
Yeah.
It was coming
mad.
It was coming out about the obsolete and poorly maintained equipment, negligence, incompetence, insubordination, mismanagement, you name it. It was happening. So he did a swift overhaul. He transferred Popov and the fleet commander chief of staff. The minister of defense, Igor Sergeyev, resigned, or was made to. 12 high-ranking officials were let go. Putin said it had nothing to do with the disaster, but
of course not.
Putin demoted the deputy prime minister Klebanov to minister of industry, science, and technology. And during all this, though, he made sure to announce that this was not caused by a collision, that this was, from their torpedoes and the missiles and mismanagement. He obviously did not want anyone in any major point of power that he could not trust. He even went as far as to replace some of these people with non-military, which was absolutely unheard of. And some really didn't like this, but he was doing it anyways. So there have been a lot of theories thrown around over the years, so I just wanted to go through a couple of them. Obviously, there's a collision, which I believe Klebanov is still holding to, that this is what actually happened. But like I said, they don't really have the information, and they're worried about why they lost their jobs or why they were demoted.
And also, like, when there have been, I know that, Russia is a very, like, secretive country, but that note was found, and the note didn't say anything about being hit. And also, there was no debris whatsoever. Like, that just seems really... Yeah.
So it was just a misfire of the original missile that...
No, it wasn't the misfire. It was the HTP. Remember I said the HTP was the one in the whale, and it was very highly volatile.
Okay, yeah.
That went off.
And then it was like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Inside the hull, basically.
Yes.
That's where they...
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had it ready to go inside the launching part. And as it was happening,
it was like, I'm head back inside.
Yeah. But I want to be in. The NATO sub, they had a theory that the sub hit a World War II era mine. NATO struck the sub was another one. UFO attack might be my favorite.
I'm changing my answer.
Yeah. Mass poisoning of the crew to keep secrets. A new Russian weapon hit it, or some think that the Peter the Great accidentally let off a missile that hit it. But if you go to the last photo there, this was the Kursk. It was raised a year later, and you can see that the damage seems consistent with the story. Could there be more? Sure, governments are sneaky.
Especially
and there you took out all the bodies at this point that were
as many as they could get. Yes.
That's just so
yeah.
God.
I could do a whole other episode on the raising, because there was a lot of things that went into that, like who actually raised it out and how it happened. But I'll stop there and just say that's the Kursk submarine disaster.
I had never heard of this ever. I
never
cannot
heard
believe
of it either. That was so well done, Chantel.
Our
submarine queen. All the submarines stories that I'm learning about. How deep was it in the water? Just curious.
So it actually wasn't that deep, and that was the reason why they were able to put. So it was 108 meters, so 354 feet. So it was fairly close to the shore, which was good because it meant that rescue operations, there was a lot more, out of country places that would have been able to help them because it was so close to the surface, but it was still deep enough that like the men couldn't get out. They did have all these extra things on board, but because the escape hatch that they needed, they couldn't get to. They weren't able to. There was another one on the back in compartment 9, which is why they all went to compartment 9. Plus, like, that's going to be the last one to kind of fill up. But it had to have that airtight suction onto it from the submarines. Then they open it up, and then they're able to go in through like decompression and all of that. But yeah, like I said, they weren't, even if they had made it there, by the time the Kursk was supposed to even report, had they even started things and getting there, they never would have gotten there on time to save any of these men, unfortunately.
I really thought that you were going to say that they were trapped and that some were rescued. I don't know what I thought, but that's
because I led you down the wrong path when I started my intro on purpose.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm like,
I like to do that too.
That they were lost for a while.
No, I mean, as far as they knew, there were 118 men lost at sea. But
it does remind me a little bit of the Titanic Ocean Gate thing, where it's kind of like Schrodinger's sub. You don't know what's happening until you know what's happening.
Find them? Yeah, and you're hoping for the best.
It's
you can recover things, but
like I said, that one that's done by Defragged History, it is so good. She goes so much in depth about what was happening, because I did find that like certain ones were either. There were certain ones where you listen to where they're really like, the U.S. is the best and they were trying everything. But it was kind of like, you need to know the real history at the time.
It's just a Russian story.
It's hard.
Like,
there's a lot of biased sources
on both sides. So that was what was nice about Defragged History, was that she wasn't swaying one way or another. She was very much like, this was what was happening in Russia and this was what was happening in the States at the time. And like, this is how all the shitty things were decided upon that led to this very shitty situation. So, from the get-go, before the games even happened, bad decisions were being made. They knew they didn't have the money. They knew they didn't have the upkeep. They knew things weren't working well. And they still went ahead with having, like you said, Lindsay, about like, why didn't they cancel this? Why are they going when all these people who are supposed to be there aren't there? Why is this even happening? It would have... Their pride got in the way. It would have looked worse to have to cancel because of stuff not working properly in the Navy. So they just were like, no, just go, just do it.
I think Putin would have been less upset if you just canceled this thing that he
wasn't
even
there. He didn't even go.
Versus
you
like
could have
losing
told him
$1
that went off
billion
without a
sub.
hitch, not done it.
Yeah,
and he would never have known.
That probably would have been easier to hide.
Or, and I'm not trying to like really brush up, but couldn't they have just like lied and said, yeah, the weekend was great. Here are photos, and they're all just like made up.
Anyway, but they
that's right.
Also, like, who's gonna be able to see this really anyway from like
no
the
one.
shore?
It's underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just to be able to give him
dark, murky water. Like,
it was just to give him the data afterwards, right? To say, this is what we did, and this is how good everything works, and like, here's where we know where we need to fix things, and like, I get why they have these war games that they do. They do it so that they can find out things about where are the weaknesses,
this wasn't
where
the
are they good.
only event at the war games. I assume.
No. There was a bunch going on. Like there was happening this one for them. They had the one the day before, and then this one was happening. You know, here is your time, 11:40 to 1:40, and that's when you do something. But like, that's what I think. What did I say? 30. There were 30 subs and like 3 airplanes or something that were all going on. So like, people are all doing things from different subs and aircrafts and ships so that they can get an idea of how do they work during an actual war. I mean, you got to practice. But yeah, they just should have canceled it.
There's someone there who knows what they're doing.
Yes, exactly. Especially when you have something that is so volatile that is using this oxidizer that you need specialized people to watch, and they're just like, oh yeah, he's off sick today, but we'll go for it.
Yeah. And now 118 men have lost their lives
for no reason at all.
Yeah.
And it's not even in battle. It's during like a training exercise.
And so many like widows because
unnecessarily.
Of this. So many people without fathers. So many, people who lost their sons. It's really sad.
Well, thanks for bumming me out.
No problem.
Really sad.
I was
hoping for a good ending.
Yeah, so was I. I feel honestly bamboozled and betrayed.
Yeah, you gave me
I was
hope
just
somehow,
pulling
even
one
though you
out
didn't directly say there was hope. I just assumed that. Yeah,
we have a couple friends of the podcast who now are terrified of diving and subs, and I feel like you just keep perpetuating the stories.
Well, sorry guys, just making it worse for you.
Yeah,
I feel like the average person will not be going on to a sub, but just if you ever had the opportunity, now you may think twice. So
yeah. I took my son, like I told you, to the Unseen Oceans exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago, and he thought it was really cool, but he was really quite disappointed that we weren't actually going underwater in a sub because he thought that would be part of the experience. I reminded him that the ocean is not that close to Chicago, but he did not
what
care.
A sweetheart.
They had a little like kind of VR situation where you could be on like a little submersible and explore. So he liked that, but he was like, it's not really the ocean though. So when can I go in the ocean? I'm like, I don't think they take children, but I like this enthusiasm. So one day he'll be on board about all our stories shared today.
Maybe he can walk onto a sub that's like docked, and just he doesn't actually have to go underwater. He just can like, okay, this is close enough. You don't have to actually.
Have you taken him to the boats on the Halifax Harbor? Ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were there last summer, so we went on. It was one of the Navy boats that sits there all the time.
They have so many. I don't know the names.
It's like the white and blue one that's always sitting there. I'm totally blanking on what it's called right now. So
Me too, but I can picture it in my head.
Yeah, and it is not luxurious, this one. Because we can go inside of it, and
so like,
there's no cramped quarters.
There's no sauna. There's no racquetball room.
No solarium and plants. And
puts into perspective of like how hard it would be at sea. For months on end. But yeah, I'll have to take him to see a sub on land at some point.
Yes.
Keyword on land.
Yeah,
it can be in the water, but it's
no
stopped.
way is my baby going underwater.
Watch as he like starts working for the Navy and becomes like a submarine.
If he wants to train as an adult, I guess I can't stop him.
Yeah, that's fair. You'll just never sleep again.
It's fine because I'll stop him.
I won't sleep. But yeah,
I will stop him. Don't worry.
Yes, as long as he's on a very safe sub.
Just before we go, I just want to say again, happy birthday to Chantel. It was yesterday.
Happy birthday
when this episode comes out.
Thanks. And what did we say? It's Pina Colada Day or something?
Yeah, and it's Pina Colada Day
so you
when
can enjoy
this one comes out.
Pina colada for your birthday, Chantel.
Okay. There we go.
Yay.
I'll do that.
And Lindsay, you can drink whatever you want. We don't want you to get sick from pineapple, so you can have a Paloma.
We won't force you to have
No.
Yes, I will be drinking Palomas probably all summer or a margarita.
Love it.
I've actually figured out my favorite cocktails: Paloma, margarita, and Aperol Spritz.
I love all of those. You know what? I don't know if it's like I read no research on this, but the older I get, the people that I'm surrounding myself with also age. Shocking, I know.
What?
And I just feel like older folks, I mean, like, you know, late 30s, older, they tend to go for tequila cocktails, which sounds counterintuitive, right? Because when you're young, it's like tequila shots, ruin your night, throw up, get sick. But as we get older, it's like, no, a tequila cocktail. I don't know why, but that seems to be like the thing. Is that just me? Like tequila
I've heard
and soda?
that tequila is the only alcohol that's not a downer, so maybe that's why.
Maybe that's why.
But I used to never drink
Life
tequila.
brings us down
apart
enough.
from
Yeah.
being forced to take shots and with like lemon or lime and the salt.
The only one I'll do, as you guys all know, is a burnt Reynolds shot. That's the only
those
one.
are delicious.
I love a good
Delicious.
1800 Blanco tequila. It is so
Get out.
good. It is so smooth. I will sit there and just shoot that.
Drink it
Nope.
straight? Oh,
Yeah,
okay. No,
and
I
take a
don't
little-
want straight tequila, but I want tequila in cocktails.
Well, I have
That
like a
is
little
my-
lime afterwards with my little after, and it's just like
so
delicious.
Lindsay and I will be in the kitchen whipping up batches of margaritas and palomas.
Yeah.
And
I'll drink
you're
that
free to
too.
have them. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
we
at
had
a
a
point
really
now
great
where
ahead.
if I'm going to consume alcohol, it's going to be because it's delicious, and that's it. I'm not being forced to take any shots.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
I find this delicious, and I love the 1800 tequila. It's the best, and I had a good spicy margarita yesterday.
If you can, it sounds good. If you can get like a small bottle, or maybe when you guys are coming over in a month or whatever, maybe then we'll get that bottle and we can try it.
Yes.
But then we'll have it for cocktails too.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like that one. I will front the cost of that one so that we
Oh
can.
well,
have it.
we're gonna figure it out, but we're all gonna be
We're
throwing
definitely
cash
having
in.
tequila cocktails.
I have a list, Lindsay. Actually, I share that list with you.
You share the note. I will. I'm sure it's already
Okay,
perfect.
can you guys do
because
this
you
on
made it.
OneNote? Like, what are you doing?
I don't even know what OneNote is. I know
It's
I've heard of it.
Microsoft.
No, we're Apple girls.
Yeah, well, you guys should fuck off.
I think 2-1 is the vote here, and
It's not
I
my
think
fault
you're gonna
that
have to.
Google Pixel's better, and you guys just.
I mean,
can't admit
it's not
it.
even my fault. Like Damien's one that got
No.
me on Apple.
I know
phone,
she
so
was
it's
an
like,
Android before too. Megan doesn't count as a vote. She just goes wherever the wind blows her.
honestly, it's so true. I'm the path of least. I hate phones. I hate that. I wanted my like texting the actual buttons. I was like the last one of my friend group to get an actual smartphone. Anywho.
Anyways.
We're getting off track now. So
Okay.
that
Oh,
was
list is
that
great.
was a very well told story. You kept me guessing until the very end. I truly
to.
did not see this. I know you called it tragedy, but anything that happens where someone gets hurt or this thing gets sunk as a tragedy, I thought there was going to be some survivors.
Yeah,
So
even if they had survived, it would still be a tragedy. So it's
yeah,
I
at
thought
least-
you did a great job putting all this together too, because
Yeah.
especially where they weren't upfront with things, it's like how do you decipher all this information and put it together? So
Yeah.
great job.
I mean, who knows? Maybe everything I told you was a lie, and that still isn't even the truth. Like, but,
somewhere in the middle.
it's the
Consider
best
your
that we
boyfriend
got.
is Russian. I assume you have secret intel,
Oh, of course, yeah.
and that you have the real story.
Obviously.
but definitely make sure that you give
He left
Lindsay
long
the
before
info
this.
for that podcast, because I mean,
Yeah.
5 hours spread over a little bit of time is not that much.
Yeah,
I watch
it-
enough
it
YouTube
was
anyway.
Really, really well done.
I can put the
loved
link
it.
to
Well,
maybe, yeah.
It's going to be on there because I use them as a lot
Also,
of my
we can
information, so.
tag them when this comes out. We'll tag their podcast too.
So they have like I'm tagging their website because that's where they got all their information from, as well as it has a link to their YouTube for all 5 of the episodes. So
we'll just make
put
sure that they
up
get
there.
a shout out.
Definitely. So anyways, that's that. Maybe next
I'm
week
gonna
we're
go
gonna
cry.
have some fun episodes. So we won't say what it is yet, but we'll have some fun going on.
In celebration of a special week coming up.
Yes.
Actually, we're gonna pull it into a whole month because that's how
Almost,
we roll.
yeah.
Well, it's in celebration of the week. We're getting ready
Correct.
for it, and everything. So
By the way, before we started today, my little girl insisted that we listen to Baby Shark at least twice.
Baby Shark, Baby Shark,
Why
don't even have kids? Well, because it's catchy.
All right,
because it's catchy.
Yeah, she knows all the moves, so I will get her to do that.
Yeah, I like it. Alrighty. Well, I love you both. Thanks for listening to me today, and bye-bye.
I love you more than Putin loves himself, and that's a lot.
Wow.
Thank you, Chantel, and thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today. We loved having you. If you liked the episode, share with your friends, family, or anyone who would enjoy it. Also, take a minute to review the Coast Files podcast on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Leaving us a comment or like really helps. You can email us at coastfilespod@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at coastfilespod, or visit our website at www.coastfiles.com. You can find the sources for today's episode on our website. See you next week with a new episode.